The infamous influencer love triangle between Ethan, Hassan, and Idubbbz has just gotten a little spicier, with Idubbbz dropping a content deputy about Ethan. Now in just 5 seconds here, I will surmise all of the important need-to-know facts for you guys. Here we go. Cool, and that's done. But seriously, if you're here expecting anything important to be said about anything politically that they may be involved in, you're not gonna find it here. Instead, we're gonna be talking about Idubbbz and his complete destruction of his, creator clash event that was supposed to be for charity, and his pretty terrible video, which was essentially a follow-up to his content cop on Ethan, where he just essentially lies a bunch and then also plugs Creator Clash more than he ever has, and also admits that he and Anissa are stepping down and stepping away from Creator Clash because they have caused so much damage that if they actually take their names off of it, it might be a salvageable charity event, but at this point, that's not looking likely. We're gonna be covering all that and more, but before we do that, I need to flip a coin. I'll give you a second to call it heads or tails, and here we go. Oh yeah, heads. Now, if you called heads, I'd ask that you support me in my journey to trying to get a silver play button. We're super close, and I would really appreciate your support. But if you've got commitment issues, totally get it. If you could just leave a like on this video, helps boost it with the algorithm, and I really appreciate it. And of course, if you called tails, I will get your ass next video. Now let's jump into this content deputy, because assuredly, nothing stupid's gonna be said in the first 15 seconds.
I was hoping that if I made a video about Ethan, he would act like an adult and he would keep the attacks directed at me and Anissa. Unfortunately, I was wrong in thinking that, because Ethan, in a desperate attempt to attack and smear Anissa and I, he started attacking our charity event.
I don't know if you know this, but the last year they lost $250,000. To be charitable, you actually have to give money to charity, Hassan. You have to give money to be charity.
So he said that he was expecting Ethan to act like an adult after the video he made of him calling out Ethan. What makes you think that Ethan was gonna respond like an adult to your video? Are you implying that your video somehow was supposed to elicit an adult response or a mature response when you Fortnite danced on him?
I'm not gonna do a react content yet, chat.
I'm the same kid. Nobody's telling you to wake up, Ethan.
Ooh, yummy, I love Sabra hummus.
Wake up, Ethan. Wake up.
As for Ethan going after your charity event, in Ian's own words, Creator Clash wasn't ever supposed to be about the charity. Apparently, the original intent of these Creator Clashes was to have this cool party and get together with a bunch of influencers and celebrities. The charity thing just happened secondarily.
If it works out, then we can do that, and there could always be a charity aspect to it. But I think the main goal is just to get the people paid who are involved in making it happen. Because we've gone to the last Jake Paul event, and it was crazy the amount of influencers that were there.
Creator Clash 1, super successful, $1 million to charity, that is fantastic. But then you had Creator Clash 2, and you lost 250 grand on a charity event. Now I think normally, you make a mistake and, if people think you're competent and whatnot, they're like, yeah, we'll give you a second chance. But losing $250,000 on a charity event, I don't know if that falls into the realm of you're competent at this and it was just a flub. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I wouldn't want him or his wife touching any sort of charity event with a 10-foot pole if that's what they did last time. If right now you drove to the nearest Taco Bell, not sponsored, just love the food, and you asked to get a beefy 5-layer burrito, $5.79 or something like that, and they asked you to raise your total to the nearest dollar to round up for charity, you would be helping a charity more than the entirety of the Creator Clash 2 event. So I'm curious to hear what you guys think, but personally, I think criticism about that point is very justified. Also, I just wanted to follow up and show you guys the second part where he talks about how after Creator Clash 2 was such a colossal failure, they banded together and raised some money for charity.
Fighters involved ended up raising $175,000 for charity.
Now, I don't know about you guys, but I don't know if I would be so comfortable admitting that all of the time and work we put into an event that had a focus on charity because it seemingly did so well on the first one, we did so terribly at that, but somehow by just doing, this fun little thing after where they're doing challenges for donation goals, they were able to rack up $180,000. If I was in Idubbbz's shoes and I colossally flopped on Creator Clash 2 and then did a stream, collabed with people and raised 180K, raised so much more than the event that was supposed to be partly for charity, my instincts wouldn't be Creator Clash 3, here we come. It would be, I'm just gonna do another stream. I'm just gonna do another charity stream because I clearly am a lot better at that than I am at this. And so here's the very cool part where they come to their senses. They're not going to be a part of Creator Clash anymore. They're stepping down, and here's where he talks about it.
Anissa and I have decided to step away from Creator Clash. We have relinquished control to our business partners who ran the previous 2 events. They're very capable. They know exactly what they're doing. They run events on a regular basis. The event is still happening. Anissa and I just don't have any financial ties. We don't have any ownership. We are, I think just going to be known as the founders of the event. Yeah, I mean, I think it had to come to this eventually. I can't keep my mouth shut. I can't, I can. I just didn't want to.
Conspiracy theory here. I think there was some partial goal in creating the content cop that he did on Ethan to get more awareness on Creator Clash 3 because it was not doing well in terms of sales. And I think what ended up happening is that it backfired colossally. And I say this because Idubbbz, by creating this content cop, roped his brand and Creator Clash into all of this drama with these people arguing about politics in regard to an incredibly bloody war that's happening overseas that has nothing to do with influencers boxing each other. And the people that had signed up for this event that just wanted to do the boxing and have a little, nice bit of clout for fighting other people and stuff, were now having to deal with those interactions and maybe feel pressured to talk about this drama or be engaged in it somehow. Or they were now having to reckon with the idea that they may have to have their name on something that's associated with all of this unemployed behavior, which caused a bunch of people to drop out, including the main card guy dropping out, which, by the way, Florida law, not a lawyer here, may end up making it so everyone's entitled to a refund if they had purchased a ticket. So I think truly, if anybody, Idubbbz has created more harm for this event than just about anybody could have. And funnily enough, now that they're stepping away, Idubbbz is plugging the ever-loving shit out of it.
It's still happening, June 28th. I'm just not gonna be involved in it. Please, for the love of God, support this event. I feel like in some ways I'm like cutting off an arm so that I could escape the bear trap, and so I can fight. Well, that's a bad analogy. The best thing that you can do for me is to support Creator Clash.
So guys, like you said, if you're interested, there's about a 50% chance that your money will go to charity based off of the track record of these previous Creator Clashes. And if you like gambling on those odds, go ahead and buy a ticket. Next up in the highlights, Idubbbz talks about how Ethan painted Idubbbz as some sort of anti-Semitic individual before even watching his content cop that he made about Ethan.
That was like the summary of personal insults labeled at Ethan. Before Ethan even knew what my video was about, he was already framing me as anti-Semitic.
But he's like, no, actually, Ethan, the fucking Jew bag. Fuck this Jew bag Zionist baby killer, guys, right?
I don't know if that's what the video is.
Just want to reiterate the fact that I don't really agree with any of the politics at play here, and that includes Ethan, Idubbbz, all of them. Like, this video and the points I'm making should be pretty much entirely divorced from the politics that they get into. I just don't really agree with how Idubbbz had framed this and responded to all of this. But with that being said, I think Ethan pre-firing that this is somehow going to be anti-Semitic in nature before he had watched the content cop, I think that was pretty silly. Even his crew was telling him, hey, maybe watch it off camera, maybe watch it off live so that you can kind of get your emotions out and deal with that instead of doing this live, but he did it anyway. And it's very clear that it was getting to him. And maybe it was half joking, but still it's pretty dumb to make calls like that because you kind of look dumb when it has nothing to do with that. So I do think that Idubbbz has a good point that, dude, you didn't even watch the video, so why are you making shots like that at me? I just find it interesting that the person that he partnered up with to make the content cop on Ethan, Mr. Hassan Piker, has still not watched the content nuke that was dropped by Ethan on Hassan. So while Idubbbz is not guilty of this himself, it's just strange that he's collabing with people and he doesn't seem to notice a bit of the irony in that, I guess. Maybe that's the proper use of irony? That isn't to illegitimize the point that Ethan should not have been pre-firing that, Ian's gonna be anti-Semitic in his content cop. But let's move on to the next point. So one of the larger points that I've seen that Ethan has made about why he detests the people that are against him on this kind of like political spectrum actually has to do with the more personal thing that happened. happened. Essentially, his son and wife contracted Giardia, which from what I understand only comes from eating poop of an animal that has Giardia, which means that there was like dog poop in the house. His kid must have eaten some of it, or it got on his hands and he licked his hands. And then somehow his wife, also Gila, contracted Giardia. Well, a bunch of people that weren't fans of Ethan were blowing up and talking about that and how terrible of a house it must be that that is happening. And it got to a point where, you know, trolls, concerned people, whoever it was, ended up contacting CPS, in which they went to their house. Ethan wasn't a big fan of this, shocker here, and he was disturbed with the fact that people were trying to paint him as some terrible father because, you know, there's poop lying around in the house and his baby contracted it, just making it seem like they're living in a poop home and that he is not taking care of his children. It's been a point of contention between him and Idubbbz because he's talked about the fact that Idubbbz did nothing to defend him in one of these serious moments that he was genuinely hurt by. And so now Idubbbz is going to try to give context about this.
You were triggered by this CPS harassment thing, and then you immediately equated Anissa and I to it. That was sloppy, and that was horrendous, and it was horrendous for us. Ethan was talking shit about us on his Instagram before any CPS shit. He was also talking shit about us on his podcast before any CPS visit. On March 7th, CPS visits Ethan and Hila, and that same day, they decide, let's do our podcast, and let's have the topic be the CPS visit and how distraught we are about that. And then right next to that, right after it, you guys talk about me and Anissa. But you don't just talk about us. You shit talk us, and you imply that we're friends with people who are doing this, who are the ones who are harassing you.
Yeah, so that timeline is really cool and awesome if you agree with Ian's reframing of the events as if it just started with the call-in visit, as opposed to people making these complaints like Denham's leading up to the call, which means that there was ample time for them to step in and say something, as opposed to maybe come to the defense of their friend Ethan. But that didn't happen, and now he's reframing it, as Papa Gut points out.
He's trying to lie and reframe the situation as if, well, how do we know the CPS just got called? How are we supposed to know all that? Because this was an ongoing thing. Denham's was talking about, Ethan was talking about this for how long before this episode? What are you talking about? Like, it started with them putting in this weird lie that he's his children, basically, and they roll around in shit. That was your friend who was doing it, or excuse me, your wife's friend who was doing it, and then it carried over into CPS actually getting called. Who fucking cares when CPS got called? Oh my god, this guy's a loser.
Isn't that framing interesting, that Ethan got triggered because CPS was called on him?
You were triggered by this CPS harassment thing.
I feel like that's kind of belittling the situation. Like, he had CPS called on him, which meant that him having his children, there was a chance that that wasn't going to happen. I'm not a father personally, but I could imagine that that would make me pretty upset if people contacted CPS because they didn't think I was fit to be a parent. And it's weird because Idubbbz references that that is harassment in this video, and at the same time, he then follows that up because I guess he gets frustrated with Ethan with this timeline, which also just didn't make sense. And so he starts justifying the CPS call.
It actually looks a lot shittier for Ethan and Hila. And I do mean that literally. There was this H3 stream where Ethan was dumping as per usual. He was talking about his own health. He was talking about his caca breath, his dog having diarrhea, his dog having giardia, his child running around putting things in their mouth.
Sonny's crawling around. He's putting everything in his mouth. He's at that age. He has giardia.
And when other people see that he's talking about his children getting giardia from dog poop, people are quite reasonably concerned.
Like, if a kid swallows a magnet or shoves a Lego up their nose and has to go to the doctor, like go to the hospital to get that taken care of or removed, do they get a CPS check? Like, do you hear that and go, someone needs to call CPS to their home? No. I mean, there's a reason that there are some toys that are like not child friendly because they can ingest them and kids are gonna do that. And you can only be so preventative with that kind of stuff. Yeah, the dog's not potty trained well enough, and the poor kid got giardia because he like crawled on it and then like put it in his mouth, something like that. How does that lead to people feeling comfortable with calling CPS to their home? And the fact that Idubbbz ends up justifying this by like, well, you're manipulative and stuff, and honestly, you know, it's a good thing we didn't defend you, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, well, I mean, hindsight's crazy, but on top of that, like, you're just using this to justify why people contacted CPS and why he had an issue with that. I don't know any father who wouldn't be incredibly upset and hurt by people contacting CPS and the potential of having their children taken away for something that is bound to happen. Not to say that your kid is going to ingest Giardia-infested poo, but your kid is going to get sick. There are going to be mistakes made, and it's not like this is a pattern or anything like that. I don't know if I'm making a whole ton of sense with that. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts, but it just seems a bit reductive. Bringing this video to a close, Idubbbz starts defending Frogan and Ethan's perspective on some of the hate that Frogan has received during all of this drama.
Frogan isn't making a bag from this. She's not getting content out of this. You're attacking her in relentless ways and endorsing so much worse harassment than what even you send her way.
The shit he said and posted about Frogan over the past years is like insanely nasty shit.
Yeah.
Worse than anyone I've seen. If this is true, absolutely mind-blowing, insane shit.
Hold on. It's not worse than anything you've seen. How could it be worse than anything you've seen?
Literally, no. I guess
he was
not.
very nasty.
Well,
I'm just saying, people like fucking want to like get lay down and fucking like.
I'm talking about specifically against Frogan.
But like he called her fat, right, and ugly, which is horrifically mean. I get called a fucking baby killer.
I was talking specifically about
That's way
Frogan.
worse than being called fat and ugly, in my opinion.
For sure, being referenced to as having your own gravity and being called ugly, terrible things. No one wants to deal with that. But I think it's kind of silly that he included the clip of Ethan going, there is so much worse that you can be dealing with on the internet. Like, that is such a bare minimum. And that's kind of a lame argument. You know, some people have it more worse off. Like, that doesn't really hold up. But I will make the point that I don't think it's Ethan that's causing all of this harassment. Maybe he's causing some of it. Most of it, I think, is coming from Frogan in the shit that they say.
I will never have any fucking pity for any fucking soldiers. U.S. military? Boo fucking who? I hope you get PTSD, and I hope you get no health insurance when you get back into fucking America. And they posted it in my head. I'm like, base?
So yeah, I just feel like it's more of her actions than anybody else's, but I'd love to hear what you guys think. But that wraps up covering his content deputy. I'm super stoked for him to not release any other videos if they're going to be like this. Rather just leave the content cop legacy for the most part untouched. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to give it a like, consider subscribing, and I'll see you Wednesday. Adios. See you. Peace. Bye.